today's webinar that will pop up when we close. If you could just take a few minutes and provide us some feedback, that really does help us as we plan content in the future. So again, my name is Bethany Servin, and this webinar is how a blind person uses a website on mobile versus desktop. Our speakers today, we have a very special guest presenter, Joseph De Niro, an assistive technology specialist at Helen Keller Services for the Blind, which is a nonprofit organization that offers a wide range of services and programs for people of all ages who are blind or have vision impairments. Joe also applies his technical background in his work for UsableNet, where he is our lead digital accessibility tester. Jason Taylor is with us as well. Those who have joined UsableNet webinars in the past will know Jason and recognize him. He is our Chief Innovation Strategist and advisor to the UsableNet CEO, and he has nearly 20 years of experience in usability and accessibility. And now it's my pleasure to hand over the presentation to Jason.
Thank you, Bethany.
Jody.
Hi, everybody. We're aware that we have a strange sort of blurring effect on Zoom, which I'm not quite sure if we're going to get rid of, but I will make sure that I read out everything on the slides, and that means that you'll be able to follow that text in the captions if you can't see them on the slides. I promise this was not a sort of deliberate effect to try to get you closer to how Joe lives his life being blind. So I take through the agenda today. Essentially, we're sort of recognizing World Usability Day. We really want to bring to this sort of next 45 minutes some education and awareness around how Joe and other blind users interact with their devices, and specifically looking at how they interact with their devices on mobile and desktop, and how that could be how that sort of should educate and sort of lean you to understand sort of things like how the WCAG fits into designing websites for people who use assistive technology such as Joe's screen reader, and how they could be applied for designing and building mobile sites and mobile apps based on sort of understanding how Joe uses technology on those devices. We've got sort of like basically three things. One is to give you an idea of what is the difference and how Joe uses those technologies differently. Then we're going to actually sort of demonstrate to you how a blind person uses their mobile phone. We've got a little video for that, but also Joe's going to give you like just his sort of, how he approaches using his mobile device over desktop. There's about 500 people signed up for this webinar, and around about 100 of you already experienced Joe using a desktop in the past. So we're gonna front load the mobile content to make sure that the new content, particularly, is something that you get out in the first 20 minutes or so, in sort of understanding that differences. So the agenda is we're going to sort of discuss how does accessibility and usability fit together. We're going to look at how the WCAG is linked to sort of screen reader users on desktop and on mobile. So how to understand how the WCAG guidelines help you build a good experience for both of those environments. And then we're going to look at examples of that technology used on mobile. And then we're going to watch Joe live on his desktop machine, taking you through how he uses his computer and his screen reader, and then we're going to take Q&A. So first, Bethany, can you move to the first slide, which is...
Yeah, has the quality of the video improved? I made a change. Or is it still not?
Yes, it has improved.
Okay, great.
So first, let's meet Joe. Joe, welcome back to our webinar series. I just wanted maybe first, Joe, for you to give us a little bit of background right now about the types of roles that you have at the Helen Keller, what you do, and then also maybe what you do also as part of your expertise with UsableNet as well.
Hey, Jason, how are you doing? Good afternoon. So I am an assistive technology specialist with Helen Keller Services for the Blind. My role is that I do evaluations of students anywhere from the teenage years all the way through adults, and we evaluate our clients to see where they are as far as their knowledge of how to use a computer, if they have any assistive technology background at all. And then we provide instruction to them so that they can either go to some sort of college situation, or to get back into the workforce. All of our clients are either visually impaired or totally blind, the instruction that I provide is on either desktop computers, mobile devices. We do everything from understanding operating system, how to navigate file management, productivity software, as well as surfing the internet and how to navigate that. And then my role with UsableNet is I'm the sort of the team lead here as far as digital user testing. And what we do is we're a team made up of individuals that represent the disability community. And we test websites either on in the mobile space or desktop, as well as mobile applications, to determine their accessibility for people with all disabilities.
Great, Joe. I was wondering if it's okay, could you maybe give us a background of your journey with regard to coming blind, like where your history of your blindness?
Yeah, I was diagnosed in 1994 with a degenerative disease called retinitis pigmentosa. At the time, I was working in the hotel industry, in hotel management. I spent almost 10 years in that industry. At the time when I was diagnosed, there really wasn't any real effect on my vision. But as time went along, the vision slowly deteriorated. In 2002, I began using a white cane. 2005, I started to use assistive technology. At the time, that was Zoom text. And approximately, probably 6 or 7 years ago, I became more exclusively using a screen reader, which is JAWS, although I'm familiar with all screen readers across all platforms.
Great. So let's talk about today's World Usability Day. Let's discuss just briefly about the importance of accessibility and usability when it comes to supporting people with disabilities, and basically, create a little slide to sort of to get people to sort of understand the difference in terms of where accessibility starts and where usability starts. The obvious one about how important accessibility is if you can't access a website or an app, you can't use it. So, when it comes to what comes first, accessibility or usability, you could very much argue that access to a website comes first, because if you can't access it, you can't use it. And accessibility is really the foundations of usability. If you look at the sort of WCAG principles of robustness and understandability, these are all very strong foundations to create a usable experience. But I think the most important aspect is the usability. Just because a website and a mobile app is quote unquote accessible, and we'll talk about what that means, if it's not usable, then it doesn't really, give any value to the people with disabilities. So As you heard, Joe heads up our user testing team. And essentially, we do encourage a proactive component of accessibility is to engage people from the disability community and ensure that they can actually use the website and app that you've built for everybody. And just a general statement about that is, you know, a really usable website, so a site that I find very usable, and I'm not blind, made accessible will probably be very usable for someone who's also blind. But a website which is not very usable, made accessible, will probably still be unusable. So, you know, the relationship has always been there as a sort of as a partnership in building experiences that people use. The first is you need to be able to access it, and second, you need to confirm that people can use it. And that doesn't change in the space of supporting people who are blind. You should follow the WCAG to make sure it's accessible, and you should involve people like Joe who could confirm that it's usable. So that's really the connection between the two. If we can move on, Bethany, to just talk about the WCAG and how it fits in, and really start talking about how does Joe use his technology differently between desktop and mobile. So maybe I just get Joe to give a brief overview of, like, Joe, tell me the technology sort of layers that you use on your desktop when you're thinking about navigating a website. And then let's talk about those technology layers on mobile. So first, let's start with desktop. What's your general setup of your computer for accessing and navigating desktop websites?
Well, I use a Windows-based computer with JAWS as a screen reader, as the screen reading software. That's my main combination. And then when I'm navigating a website, I have different sets of keyboard commands or keyboard navigation that I can use to get around. So it's things that are as simple as arrow navigation, just using the arrow keys to navigate around, or the tab key, or the return key to interact with links or elements on the screen. But we also have available what are called accelerator keys or quick keys, where we can kind of jump to different elements that are on the screen, such as headings or buttons or edit fields, etc. So that's everything is keyboard driven, though, as far as how we navigate with a desktop computer.
So to just recap, so people don't think that Joe's using anything technically different than everybody else. So he uses a Windows computer. He uses Chrome. So he uses Chrome as a browser. He navigates the web using Chrome. He interacts with websites using Chrome. He uses his sorry guys, someone just decided to do construction work next to my apartment without telling me.
All right.
Anyway, sorry about that. So he uses his Chrome to navigate the website. He's now using a screen reader to tell him what's happening with that browser, what's happening on the website. And as he said, he has to use his keyboard. He has to use his keyboard to actually tell the browser what to do and use the website. So where the WCAG comes in is, think about a website as having all of these sort of anchor points and elements that Joe needs to navigate a website. He uses navigation, he uses tab order, he uses headers, he uses form fields. The WCAG allows you to know how to code those to make them understandable, unique, well-structured, and consistent. And that's how it fits together. The WCAG really gives you the guidance to create these sort of anchor points and structure for Joe to use his desktop browser. Now, when we get to mobile, it slightly changes. So maybe Joe, you could talk about the setup on mobile and how you use your mobile device differently than desktop.
So I use, my main device that I use is an iOS device. I use an iPhone, although I do have an Android device as well. And I run, the screen reader that's on that is VoiceOver, which is built into the iOS operating system. And the main difference is, while you can use an external Bluetooth keyboard, these devices are designed to be used with touch gestures. So I navigate around using different swiping gestures or tap gestures, or we also use what's called touch exploration, where you just move your finger around the screen to find the elements or the content on the screen that you're looking for. And then, after you find the content, then you can use other gestures to interact with it.
That's great. And actually, we've actually got a little video that we're going to show now that helps you see that. Briefly, let's just talk about the top used devices by the disability community. This is a great research done by WebAIM every year. A call out to those guys. They document in the disability community what type of technology setup they've got. They've now started covering mobile in detail, so you can see the types of devices most people use and the types of voiceover they use, in case you want to set that up as part of your QA. So this is, there's a link on here that will take you to that current survey, and it covers all sorts of areas with regard to technology used by assistive technology users. Bethany, do you want to cue up the video? I want to basically get people to visually see what Joe's talking about with regard to touch in screen and how touch exploration on mobile is really important for people who are blind or people who are using assistive technology.
Just 1 second, I'm just optimizing it so that we can hear the computer sound. And here we go.
Twitter. You go to, you run your finger along the screen and you find what you're looking for. And there's like a little bit of a vibration, so it helps too. And it reads everything on the screen as you're going. And so then I open Twitter. Vertical scroll bar. 46, 36%, 26, 60, and it's at the top of the Twitter page now. Compose tweet. And I'm gonna compose a tweet. And normally you would use the regular keyboard here, but the iPhone also has this other keyboard where when you turn it, now I can braille and use a braille keyboard. So .M space REATING space A space TWEET space RIGHT space NOW period now space .sec cat space LOE space EMING space F1 space ICAPAONE period iPhone. And so portrait. Then they can read what I wrote. Cap G. Using my iPhone. Voice recording. Text field is editing. I'm creating a tweet right now. I love using my iPhone. Character mode. Insertion point at end. So I could share that if I want. But that's pretty much the idea. Twitter. And so you double tap on anything to open it. Doc. Messages. Safari. And it'll bring up whatever. So basically it just reads whatever is on my screen, and then I can interact with it and double tap or triple tap or scroll using 3 fingers up and down. Next button. Address. Google.com. Address. Delete. Selection deleted. HTTPS Braille screen input. BLOGFPOT period. OM. Portrait. Go. Next button. Address. Blogger.com. Secure and validated connection. 1392. Read more. Link. Blogger's new interface is now available automatically. So yeah, that's basically how I would use my iPhone. Zoom webinar.
Thank you, Bethany. So hopefully that helps people realize the importance of design when it comes to mobile accessibility. So the real difference between designing or building accessibility into websites and mobile is the understanding of how Joe would actually use mobile in a different way than he uses desktop, because he has the ability to touch and explore. And that's a really important concept to have in your head when you start looking at WCAG and how that interacts in the mobile space. So yes, it's important that when Joe touches an element, it's coded correctly to be, again, understandable, unique, consistent, right? So all of those same WCAG rules around how to ensure that what you're building is robust and understandable. But at the same time, the spacing of elements, the design of elements, the easy to find components of elements while you're on a screen increases on mobile beyond on desktop. Joe, could you give us an idea of, in your sort of interaction in a day, how much time do you spend on mobile, as in using your mobile device compared to using your desktop device today?
It depends if it's a work day or not. If for my personal use, I would say probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the time these days I'm using a mobile device for all of my day-to-day stuff, banking, shopping, even email. A lot of times I'm on my mobile device throughout the day. So it's for my personal use. I'm probably only on my computer about 25% of the time.
So we're now going to go and we're going to, in 1 second, Joe, I'm going to ask you to take over the screen and actually start showing us how you use on desktop. And just to make sure people get the connection, when Joe starts using on desktop, we're going to see him using keyboard only activity, which basically means that he's using his keyboard to tell his browser to interact with the website code. And essentially how good the website code is will be clear to you in terms of whether you can understand what the screen reader's saying back to you, right? In the mobile world, that's gestures. So that's sort of things like swiping, 3-finger swiping that you saw, swipe left, swipe right are gestures, double tap. So you can use gestures to get around in the mobile world, but the majority of the time in the mobile world, a blind person is touching the screen, exploring with touch, and then using double tap once they find the element that they want to interact with. On desktop, it's different. On desktop, Joe is 100% reliant on the code. He can't explore with his hands. He can't find things that we can see, which is sort of like in the mobile world. He's using his fingers instead of his eyes. In desktop, he's absolutely reliant on the code quality. So again, I want to give a call out again on this slide. This is a slide that talks about the most popular combinations. The combinations are either, which browser, so internet browser, the disability community uses with the most popular screen reader. So today, Joe is using, Joe, you're using Chrome and JAWS, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. But, another popular combination is Internet Explorer and NVDA, for example. If you're looking to sort of set up testing to make sure that your website works with a particular user group, you may want to actually, survey some of your users to decide what their main combination is, same as, testing in any other environment. One other comment I make about testing with screen readers, because they're using a browser, you're going to want to make sure that you use a base browser that your website team right now already QA with. So for example, in the tech world, Chrome right now is probably #1 that the QA team will actually test with. They might not test with Internet Explorer. So if you go and get a user who is blind that uses JAWS with Internet Explorer, they might find problems with Internet Explorer but you perceive that they might be accessibility issues. So it's important that you start with a base browser that your QA team is happy that the website works well with, and add a screen reader technology on top of that. That's the only comment I'd make about the QA relevance of the combinations. So Joe, maybe you can take over the demo now and then sort of start sort of taking us through slowly about how you interact with a website and your computer using a screen reader.
Okay.
Alt S. Zip. OK button. You cannot start screen share while the other participants. OK button. Enter.
Okay.
Alt S. Select basic. Share. Optimize. Share screen. Enter. Meeting controls.
Okay. You have me on screen?
Search box. Meeting controls.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit the Windows key on the keyboard.
Search box edit.
So just bring up the search, and we're going to open Chrome today.
CHR. Google Chrome. App. Enter. Address and search bar edit.
Focus is automatically put into the address bar in Chrome here.
V-O-E-O-G. Enter. Everything you need to vote -vote.org Google Chrome. Everything.
And since voting was a big thing in the news, we decided to go with this website today, which is vote.org. And I'm just kind of
reopen new tab, maximize unavailable.
I'm just verifying that my screen is maximized.
Enter. Leaving menus. Everything you need.
Okay, so typically when I begin teaching the internet, we teach first the basic ways of navigation. So that would be arrow navigation and tab navigation. So I'll start off with simple arrow navigation.
Navigation region. Visited link home. List of 2 items. Link donate. Open menu button collapsed. List end. Navigation region end. Main region. You have the right to vote. If anyone tries to stop you, call the Election Protection Hotline at link 1-866-687-8683. Link. We also wrote a handy guide that outlines.
So literally, when we navigate this way, we're navigating line by line. So I'm going to bring focus back up to the top of the screen.
Everything you need to vote-vote.org.
So next way we teach is tab navigation using a tab key, where we go to all of the tabbable elements on the screen. So that's a little bit faster.
Everything you need to vote-vote.org. Visit list with 2 items. Donate link. Open menu button collapsed. To activate, press enter. Main region 1-866-68. We also wrote a handy guide that outlines your voting rights. Link. Election results take time and every vote must be counted. Learn.
So that's some of the elements. I'm just going to go back up to.
We also wrote a handy guide that out 1-86 banner region, navigation region, list with 2 items. Open menu button collapsed.
Here, open menu collapse. That's a collapsible menu. So I'm just going to hit the space bar on that to expand that.
Space expanded. List end. Navigation region end. Navigation region. List with 5 items. Voter registration rules link. Voter registration deadlines link. Check your registration status link. Register to vote link.
So there's a whole bunch of different choices that you have in this menu. And then the other way that we can navigate on here is that we can use what's called accelerator keys or quick keys, where we can go to, I can pretty much get to any type of element that's on the screen, whether it's a button or an edit field or headings, etc. And I can jump to that, which makes navigation when a website is really done well, it makes for a very easy navigation experience and an efficient navigation experience. So now I'm going to use heading navigation here.
Voter registration heading level 4.
And these headings, when I teach about headings are kind of like headlines in the newspaper, and then you jump to read like the name of the article, and then you would switch to like arrow navigation. You would jump to the article and then use arrow navigation to kind of read it. So that's how I kind of use as a corollary is headings are like headlines in a newspaper. So
Absentee ballots heading level 4.
So say for this, absentee ballots, that's the heading.
List of 3 items. Link absentee ballot rules. Link absentee ballot deadlines. Link get your absentee ballot.
So that's all the related content for that specific heading.
Vote by mail heading level 4.
Vote by mail.
List of 3 items. Link vote by mail rules. Link vote by mail deadline. Link vote by mail.
So that's all the relevant stuff for like voting by mail. And that's, and this can be super useful. Like if there's a form, if you know that there's a form, you can kind of, if you know that you're going to be filling out one, you can jump to the first edit field in the form. And you have that ability with accelerated keys.
Well, Joe, do you want to, I think we saw a link there, I think register to vote. Could you maybe go into that page and take a look at and bring up the sort of, I know they're absolutely useless for you, but the panels actually you can pull up in JAWS to show the header structure and the form structure, which is useful for us because we're
navigation region,
see it, but not for you. But
navigation region, home link, list with 2 items, donate link, open menu button expanded, to activate navigation region, voter registration deadlines link, check your registration, register to vote link.
So I'm gonna pull that up.
Register to vote online. Every person who shares helps us reach 3 more voters. Free online tools at vote.org's award-winning technology to your web. Register to vote online.
So I'm gonna bring
We had a question. Can you just clarify, are you jumping through the sections by tapping tab? Or how are you doing that?
right then I was using tab navigation, correct. And then I actually, yeah, I was using tab navigation actually through that. I tabbed to where the menu, the menu was, and actually it was already expanded, so I just continued down through the menu.
And is the main difference between arrows and tab the speed, or is it your preference?
Is it the speed or what? My preference?
Yeah, the question is the main difference between arrows and tab the speed?
Yeah, arrow navigation pretty much reads everything on the screen, all content, whereas tab navigation goes a little bit quicker than that because it only goes to the elements that are in the tab order.
Okay, thank
so
you.
just to add to that, to Joe's point there, Joe talks about headers. He's going to bring up one right now, but think of, I talk about big targets and small targets. So headers allow you to create big targets. You've got a page, it's got lots of information on it. You can create headers to sort of give people bigger targets. Once they hit that target, they hear a header that they're interested in, then they'll probably go to tab or arrow for the details. So small targets. The main difference between arrows and tabs is tab you can set an order. So if you want to, you can set the order differently than the actual element order, meaning the page structure. So arrows will just go through every single element in the order it is on the page, where tab, you can actually set the tab order differently because you can actually set it in the code, again, under the WCAG. So you could decide actually the first 5 links that are the most important are actually not the first 5 at the top of the page, they're actually in the middle, and I'm going to set the tab order to those first 5 links. So the tab order is quicker, but also more control for someone who's designing.
Okay, you want me to bring up the headers or the links?
I just wanted you to bring up, you talked about the fact you've got a quick keys to headers, for example, right? Or quick keys to form fields. I just wanted to show that you actually, if you were using a screen reader and you were visual, you could actually see those and see how they're structured without having to listen to them, for example.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up the list of
JAWS version 2020 2008 24. Register to vote called escape. Visited link home.
okay.
You're on the register to vote page. It's okay.
Headings list view. Register to vote online : 1 of 13.
Okay, so it brought up the list of links. It told me what the first one was and that there are 13 the list of headings, and there's 13 headings on this page.
Register to vote :1, 2 of 13. Jump directly to your state :3, 3 of 13. Every person who shares helps us reach 3 more voters :4. Free online tools :3, 5 of 13. Premium online tools :3, 6 of 13. Vote.org mission statement :3, 7 of 13. Shopvote.org :3, 8 of 13.
And that 3 at the end is the level of the heading that you're hearing as well. So it also tells you the level of the heading.
Just to clarify, there's a question: how do you get to the header list? That's a shortcut key, like F5 or something like that. Correct.
Insert F6, yes.
Insert F6. So just to clarify, guys, the screen reader, JAWS, for example, has a set of keys that Joe actually teaches his students. You know which ones belong to which. In the same way that the keyboards have shortcut keys to do many things on your computer. JAWS sets out a set of shortcut keys that will bring up lists of elements such as headers, forms, links, that gives Joe that ability to sort of know what's on the page and get to that content quicker than just using arrow, for example. But of course, Joe doesn't ever bring up the list of headers because he can't see the list, but he navigates by headers, and that's what he was explaining. So he has, I don't know what the keystroke command, Joe, to navigate headers is. What is the keystroke command?
Just a simple H, just H on the keyboard.
Okay. So this is sort of what Joe teaches his students about how to use screen readers, is how to use the keyboard with the screen reader. And the keyboard is how Joe gets around all those anchor points. And I talked about, if you think about the WCAG, it defines for you the anchor points that are most useful for Joe. So for example, headers, links, forms, form fields. It defines how you should code those so Joe can find them easily. That's about sort of supporting the right code level. So when he does bring up his header list, it's clear about what his headers are. Or if he navigates by headers, you've structured that page correctly. And the WCAG sort of really outlines how you should try to make them understandable, because Joe's only listening to them, that they're unique. So Joe doesn't hear 3 links that have got the same name. So that's called about, uniqueness helps to be understandable. And then sort of robustness is about consistency. So making sure that when you use a description for a form field, you use the same description on every form that uses that same field and stuff like that. So that's sort of like taking the WCAG and sort of putting it into Joe's world. Joe wants structure, consistency, uniqueness, and understandability. Joe, could you just show us filling in that form, just to give people a visualization and sort of an understanding?
Register to vote online heading level 1. Register to vote heading level 1. This will take 2 minutes. Link Espinal.
Sure, it's going to take me 2 minutes according to it.
First name star. Name region. Frame.
Okay.
JOFEPH. Last names DINEO. Straight address star required invalid entry. End. Numlock on. Straight address star edit required invalid. 1 2 3 space. MAIN space STREET. Apartment edit. Type and tech. City star edit. NEW space YORK. State star combo box.
Can we leave off state for now, Joe?
Huh?
Can we leave off state for now? See what their error message looks like.
Okay.
Zip code star edit spin.
Okay.
1 1 11.
Oh.
1 0 0 1 1 8. What date of birth star combo box required invalid.
Okay, so it's a combo box.
Open list box. January, February, March, April. Enter. Combo box required invalid entry. Open list. 1 2 5. Enter. Combo box required invalid and open list box. List 1985. To move to 1986. Combo box required menu 1986. Email address star edit AODATESTER at YOPMAIL period COM cell phone number button. To activate, press enter. 212-987-4567 continue button. To activate, press enter. State star combo box required invalid entry. To change the selection, use the arrow keys. So it brought focus right back to that combo box and stated that it was an invalid entry. So I'm just going to now fill that in. Oh, Ohio, North Carolina, New York. And what I did there was you can use, because it's set up like a list, you can use first letter navigation to kind of jump down. So it's a quick way to kind of fill that out. Zip code star edit, date of birth star combo box required 5 combo box email address star cell phone number edit continue button enter iframe heading level 1 register to vote.
That's good, Joe. I think we're good there because that's now you actually have to confirm your details, which I don't think you will. But I think it shows a really well. One is good news that vote.org was a very accessible site. And really well designed and developed, but I also hope that gives people an idea of, sort of the interaction that Joe has is this sort of structured world where he's using a keyboard to get around. So the key to accessibility is creating that well-defined structure, well-defined descriptions, well-defined forms and fields, but also, Joe showed off there how there's good ways to handle for usability. So for example, what you saw about Joe's error message jumping back to the field is a good example of you have to code that to a particular standard to make that happen. That's really good usability. You could maybe not do it that way and it's not as easy to use and it would still be quote unquote accessible because you can use it, but it would be confusing for Joe. So there's usable accessibility and there's accessibility. Same as I think for everyone who uses a website. Sometimes you use a form and it's easy to use and you can see when it's an error message and what's wrong. Sometimes it's harder to see and that's really the same thing for accessibility development. So I think we're on to the Q&A section. Bethany, I don't know if you wanted to take over and grab some of the highlights of the Q&A section for Joe.
Yeah, we had a lot of good questions come in. How important are heading levels and the hierarchy of the headings? For example, would having heading level 3 in the child element of heading level 4 create a lot of confusion for users?
Sometimes it does. And I don't really have a good example, but probably maybe on like on an e-commerce site, sometimes heading levels can be confusing because you think there's a relationship between the child heading and the parent heading, and then the content doesn't really relate, and you're kind of confused at times.
Okay. Great. Is there a best practice you prefer when there are tab stops only on interactive elements? Or, okay, sorry, Joe, is there a best practice you prefer whether there are tab stops only on interactive elements or whether it's okay or good to have tab stops on items like headings?
You don't need, because everybody knows about, most screen readers, users know how to use heading navigation. Because you have that ability to jump by heading, it's not necessary to have a tab stop at a particular heading, okay, in my opinion.
We had this one come in. On mobile, is there a significant difference between the browser experience and native apps when using screen readers? Is it necessary for native apps to be developed with accessibility in mind, or can screen readers mostly figure it out?
No. I've had horrible experiences with, I mean, you're talking about native apps or native apps to the operating system, like Apple's native apps?
No,
Or-
I think you mean we could cover both of these. So think of it, Joe. What I think there's two types of things that obviously generally companies are making, right? Native apps to work on iPhone. So maybe a banking app, for example, right? Let's cover those, for example. Like, how important is it for those to cover to follow accessibility, or does magically the iOS know what it's doing?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I have an issue right now with actually transferring, funny enough, with my bank, which will remain nameless, transferring money between accounts. I cannot do that right now because the element, the touch gesture will not interact properly with the element to do the final step in the transfer.
So Bethany, I'll just add to that. So that when you build a native app, there is a set of accessibility guidelines published by, for example, one by Apple and one by Android. They're the most likely apps that you're going to be built. But even, you know, Windows also apps have a guideline. So similar to WCAG, they have a sort of technical guideline, and that's what Joe's talking about. The elements that you have need to be coded in a certain way and use the accessibility basically SDK that Apple have, and you need to integrate that in with the app to make sure that elements can be double tapped and interact with in the way that Joe wants. But as I sort of explained as well, you've also got to give extra attention to the actual layout and the sort of structure of the design, because Joe's going to be exploring how to use the app for the first time with his fingers. And he's not going to, you know, so you want to be very conscious about how to design for large touch areas and stuff like that. We actually have a downloadable white paper that maybe Bethany, you can send out as a follow-up to this around the actual designing of native apps for inclusive design. We actually put it together and did a webinar recently with Nielsen and Norman's group around that. And I think that's a very useful tool for people to have on hand.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll make sure to send out that link to everyone that joined today. It does have a lot of really good information, and we updated it recently to WCAG 2.1. What time is it? Do we want to do a couple more questions? How are we doing?
Yep, let's do some more questions. That's good.
Okay. So this is an interesting one. Joe, what's your biggest gripe with modern websites and their accessibility practices?
Interaction, being able to interact with elements and not having the ability to do that. And that's on both desktop and mobile. Just you get to a button or a like that collapsible menu. There's many times where it doesn't expand, and there's no way to kind of work around that. If you don't have access to the menu, you don't have access to any of the navigation.
I think the other thing that comes up a lot with our user testing is when you have a dynamic website, which once an item is selected inside of, let's say you're doing a checkout of an e-commerce site, and you've selected an item, and because you selected something, other things on that web page have changed, and it's not obvious to someone like Joe that it's changed because visually he's not notified. So you know, making sure that changes to the current status are known and easy to find and easy to understand. You know, one of the biggest issues we find in user testing of what I class as quote unquote interactive environments like e-commerce and banking and finance and stuff like that.
We had someone ask kind of an interesting question. I know we talk a lot about using consumer sites, but someone asked, in a typical day of work in the office, what are the needs of the systems that you have to be able to perform?
I didn't hear the second half. What are the?
What systems do you need to be able to use to perform your job? So like Outlook would be one.
Well, I use Microsoft Office extensively, but I provide instruction in that. So I need to be able to use Outlook. I need to be able to use Excel, PowerPoint, Word. I need to be able to obviously work on the internet to do things. Sometimes there's third-party software that we use for client management that I need to be able to interact with as well.
Are there any specific advantages you find to using JAWS instead of NVDA, or is it more of a personal preference? I actually was going to say, I think this kind of goes back to the chart that we have on, what different people are using. You can take a look at that. But Joe, is that just a personal preference for you?
Yeah, it's a personal, well, it's not just a personal preference. I mean, JAWS is basically what's used in the corporate environment and in the educational environment. NVDA is the other big screen reader in the Windows environment, but it's an open source screen reader, so it's generally not used in the corporate environment. I mean, that's what I do instruction in is JAWS. When we do instruction at Helen Keller, we're teaching people the screen readers that's basically used in the workspace or in the education space.
Yeah, on that, Bethany, if you dive into some of that data, the sort of practical reality is this: if someone uses a Apple computer, so a laptop or an iMac or anything, they're using VoiceOver from Apple. They're not using JAWS and they're not using NVDA because it only works on Windows. So firstly, if you think nearly all your users are sort of at home using Apple product, they're using VoiceOver. The practical thing that Joe talked about is that most people who have are at school or at universities or at a corporate job, they've typically been purchased their equipment, and normally that would be a Windows with JAWS combination because that's probably the best combination out there. But people who are, let's say, don't have the money to buy JAWS would probably use Windows and NVDA. Joe, would you agree with that generally?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. We've gotten through a lot of questions. I think we had someone ask this twice. Any advice about coding alt tags for simple animated GIFs? And they're interested in seeing how images are read to you via in alt tag data, which I don't think we're set up for today, but maybe we can do a video of or something. But advice about coding alt tags for simple animated GIFs that you can give.
I'm going to give that one to you, Joe. What would you like an animated GIF to say?
Well, the long and short of it is well, I mean, I don't have a good answer. If it's an animated GIF, I guess probably try to simplify the description of what's happening in it. To finding the balance of describing it well, but in the simplest, in probably the least amount of words. I don't need a story to be read because I'll be parked on that animated GIF for a while.
Yeah, good. Someone told me this analogy once, which is, imagine you're playing a game with friends and there's 5 images or 6 images in front of them, and you're on the other side of the table and you've got to describe quickly for them to find the one that you're talking about the quickest. That's essentially what you're trying to do with descriptions, is to be precise, quick, and unique in terms of what you're describing, whether that's an image or whether that's an animated GIF.
Yeah, I think that's great. How often do you use voice command with your mobile? Is it easier than double tapping in general?
Well, I don't use voice commands at all for any sort of navigation. The only time I would use voice is possibly dictating text messaging or emails. I will sometimes do that, but a lot of times I actually use the virtual keyboard because I'm pretty good with it.
Yeah, and I think it's to be clear, right? And we talked about this before we have another webinar where Joe talks about artificial intelligence and how that's changing his interactions with technology. But he talked about Siri, and he talked about, how he can use Siri, to invoke things on his phone. For example, he can use Siri to find his banking app and open his banking app, but that's it. Then it's the app's responsibility about how it supports his gestures and his touch to navigate that banking app to actually do anything. He can't ask Siri or use voice command to do anything with that app once it's open. Is that correct, Joe?
Correct.
Okay. For desktop work, have you tried using gestures on a touchpad or a touchscreen tablet type of device, like a Surface device?
No, I a long time ago I did, and I don't find that to be an efficient way to use the screen reader on a desktop computer.
And that's not how you would teach your students to,
No.
Okay.
No,
And
not at all.
And again, Joe's teaching his students to help them prepare for higher education or jobs, so wouldn't necessarily be. Okay, there are a lot of questions, but I think we got to quite a few of them. When looking to hire various web development teams, how can you ask or search for people who know the WCAG guidelines?
You could ask them first. I mean,
put it in the job requirements and on Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of organizations now where you can get certification in sort of accessibility, which I think are important if that's an important part of it of the requirement.
Yeah, I was thinking of the International Association of Accessibility Professionals might be.
Yeah, and they have different classes and stuff. There's also I think LinkedIn now has some certification around accessibility. I know Microsoft has some free certification around accessibility. So, looking for anyone who's taken part in some of those courses, which are a lot more, it shows that they've got intent and interest and knowledge if they've spent time with those particular certifications.
Okay, great. Well, we are at 1 o'clock, and I do see we have started to see a couple people drop off. So I do want to thank everyone for their time today. Joe and Jason, thank you so much for presenting. There is a survey that's going to pop up after this ends. You can take just another minute of your time and let us know how we did, if the content was what you expected, if you would like to see something more or something different. Next time, that's always helpful, and we do use the feedback to plan for future webinars. So thank you everyone so much for joining today. Jason, Joe, any final thoughts?
No, just always thanks, Joe, for your time. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I don't have anything either. It's always fun doing these.
Great. All right, and we did record today's session, and a link to that will be sent out early next week. Thank you everyone for joining the webinar today.